This is Judy Collins, and you are listening to Everything Fab Four on Salon.com.
Welcome to Everything Fab Four, a new podcast focused on fun and intelligent stories about the Beatles. I'm your host, Ken Womack, music culture columnist for Salon.com and a Beatles scholar and historian. No other band, or popular phenomenon for that matter, has enjoyed the global impact of the Beatles. They are part of our human fabric. They created an enduring music that brings people together, and just about everyone has their own Beatles story to tell. Some that are surprisingly deep and unexpected. With each episode, we'll be featuring a new guest to share their Fab Four journey, along with amazing theme music from Black Rabbit. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everybody has a story.
So these four boys come down who are gorgeous, who have bangs. Boys with bangs? Huh? Boys with bangs and boots? What? You know, and they just come down and they're so funny and charming and fabulous and everybody loves them and they're so cute and the songs are so catchy. And boom, it was this absolute shift so fast. It was so quick. That's what was so amazing.
Today's guest is not only a Beatles fan through and through, but a successful jack of all trades in numerous sectors of the entertainment industry. Plus, he's honest-to-goodness royalty. Born the 26th Marquis des Barres, Michael des Barres has enjoyed renown as an actor, musician, and songwriter. In the 1980s, he famously took to the world stage standing in for Robert Palmer as the lead singer for the Power Station, the Duran Duran-led supergroup. Des Barres fronted the band during their bravura performance at Live Aid. During that same period, he scored an international hit with Obsession, which he composed with Holly Knight and which catapulted the group Animotion to the top of the charts. As an actor, Des Barres has hundreds of credits to his name on the big and little screens alike. He can be seen in movies like Ghoulies, Pink Cadillac, and Midnight Cabaret, as well as such TV shows as WKRP in Cincinnati, Melrose Place, MacGyver, Seinfeld, Roseanne, Just Shoot Me, Lois and Clark, and Nash Bridges. These days, Des Barres hosts the Michael des Barres program on Little Steven's Underground Garage for SiriusXM, where he enjoys a daily audience of more than 6 million listeners. Welcome, Michael des Barres.
So dig this. My Beatles story is, I was at this boarding school in England from 8 to 16, right? And I never went home in the vacation period because my father was in jail and my mother was at an institution for schizophrenia. Don't sob right now because it's okay. I grew up fine. But I'm 16, I'm in drama school. What happens? The BBC come to our drama school and take 6 of us from that class and says, we're going to shoot you going to a concert. This is absolutely true. We're going to shoot you going to a concert, and the camera's going to be on you, and we're going to see your reaction going into the gig, during the gig and after the gig. It's the fucking Beatles. And the Nashville Teens and Dusty Springfield and the Yardbirds and the Animals and Freddie and the Dreamers and Jerry and the Pacemakers and unbelievable.
Was this some kind of package tour?
What happened in those days was there was a British newspaper called the New Musical Express. Some of you aficionados out there will understand what that is. It was the Bible. So every year they would have a festival, and everybody'd have 3 minutes. Billy J. Cream and the Dakotas, you name it. I mean, there was like 20 bands doing 3 songs. Well, the closing act, it was John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and and that's when I saw them. I saw them play. I'm one of those few creatures on the planet. Apart from Ringo and Paul, that actually, so there they are. And I have never experienced anything like it because all of what you hear is true in terms of the audio. You couldn't hear a word. It was like a silent movie with a family of dinosaurs screaming. and the dinosaurs were these young girls, and I swear to God, all I could do was look at the young girls for one thing, but but I adored the Beatles at that time because I was stuck in this boarding school, and music was my release. And when they came along, because I was very into Muddy Waters, and in fact, all the music that inspired John Paul, George, and Ringo, which were girl groups for the most part, and Little Richard, right? So that's the music that I would listen to. And now I'm seeing these four guys, I'm 16, they're 20 or whatever it was, and it was this osmosis, this miraculous thing. So and they were shooting us all the time, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, they're filming us and we were screaming, yeah, it's great. When it came time to leave, I snuck backstage. I left the whole gig. I'd leave them behind, all the kids and the BBC and the crew, and I tried to find them. I went back, and of course, I was thrown out on my ass. And but nevertheless, that was my first experience with the phenomena, the cultural, tsunami of the Beatles.
That must have seemed like an incredible tonic at the time.
It was desperately needed. In post-Second World War England, the working class were unemployed, and it was a dreadful cultural thing. London was considered, the key city. But when these four young men came down from the north of England, which was considered sort of beneath the great culture of London, the great British hypocrisy bullshit, so these four boys come down who are gorgeous, who have bangs. Boys with bangs? Huh? Boys with bangs and boots? What? And they just come down and they're so funny and charming and fabulous and everybody loves them and they're so cute and the songs are so catchy. And boom, it was this absolute shift so fast. It was so quick. That's what was so amazing. So, because we were, I was going to those clubs and watching the Yardbirds, which is a very different vibe. It was, the blues. These were pop songs. They were a pop band, and it was an explosion. And I think what I'm trying to get at is that England needed to be cheered up, and England needed some heroes, not just World War II veterans who were almost shunned by society because nobody wanted to be reminded about the bombing. And these four kids came out of the rubble of the Second World War and changed the world.
So why are we still listening to these guys in the 21st century?
The cultural significance of the Beatles is absolutely unparalleled by any artistic endeavor, and indeed political endeavor, or even the light bulb. Because the light bulbs went on when the Beatles arrived. It gave like Jimmy Dean gave credence to teenagers, because pre-James Dean, America specifically, were children and adults. And James Dean gave the teenagers a voice. Well, so did the Beatles. But the voice of the Beatles was in music. Music is a force that is inexplicable. If you're talking about, whatever it is, Catholicism or witchcraft, what do you do at these occasions? Sing. Music is everything. It's the great spell that is cast upon the universe by John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And they were all songs of love, she does love you. She loves you, I mean, imagine writing a song, not I love you or she loves me. The Beatles said she loves you. That was a major Dickensian literary moment. They're talking to a friend. I mean, who the hell talk? So then we're all friends now with John, Paul, George, and Ringo. They are our brothers. So we talk to them when we need them. And when we need them, we listen to their music. And remember, there were only 10 hours of Beatle music made. So it's a staggering 10 hours changed the world, which is a great title for the next documentary from Martin Scorsese.
So what was it that caused you, Michael Day Barr, to form such a lasting connection with them?
It's not so much melodically, because I'm Steve Marriott, I'm not John Lennon. But I would say that John Lennon in particular was a real major force in my view of the world, because he, like me, didn't have a mother. Julie was gone, right? And that's what happened to me. And that changes you, the parental vibe, so you become pretty cryptically cynical about the world when you're not brought up by anybody. Now, you either go in one direction or another. The great thing about Lennon's life, the mythology of Lennon's life, is that he overcame these incredible difficulties. And I related to that. I could see him changing when Yoko came, and his art changed, and his view of the world changed, and he became an activist. You know, he went from this sneering, cynical, difficult man to an activistic, guy who wanted to change the world with peace. And and when he sang, "Mother, you had me, but I never had you," that song blew my mind. Never mind Imagine. Mother was the song that did it for me.
So, how did you find yourself being able to take part in the Power Station gig at Live Aid?
I was in Texas with Don Johnson having fun. You know, he's my friend, doing a movie. And I got a call from a promoter in New York saying, "Come to New York. There's a band that needs a singer, and they have a tour booked, and you should come. They really want to meet you." And I said, "Who are they?" And I said, "We can't tell you." I said, "Well, first class limo at the airport. I'll see you, and tonight." And I went from Marshall, Texas. I got in the car. I went to this office in Manhattan, up 17 floors. There's John Taylor sweating and Tony Thompson looking very nervous, because this is a tour 6 months, man. This is hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, and they liked me because we'd opened for them, Checkered Past, me and Jonesy's band and Clem Burke. And one time, and they remember me, and that's why they contacted me. We go to the Power Station studio, we take Robert's voices off. I take the tape, I go on the Concorde to London. I meet with Andy Taylor, who is there 8 hours late. I went to the studio. I'm waiting for him. He arrives in a billowing marijuana smoke, dream with two bodyguards. He's a little guy, great guy. So I sang a verse and a chorus of Get It On, and he pushed the control button and said, "Let's go shopping," which I did. Spent $20,000 on clothes, got back on the Concorde, went back to New York. Don was in New York. We went to dinner at Chinoise. As we're going out of the suite, the phone rings, and Danny Goldberg, my manager, says, "You're out. It's over." I said, "What?" He said, "You're out. Palmer's back in." I said, "Can I keep the clothes?"
That's incredible.
He said, "No." And they're in the boxes in my hotel suite, right? So then I'm obviously shattered, and I go to dinner. What happens? Me and Don were sitting there. Who walks in? John Taylor. 6 tables away from us, sort of avoiding me, right? Because Palmer's back in. So Don says, "Hang on, Mikey, I'll be right back. Hang on." So he goes over to John and he says, "Can I talk to you?" "Yes." Because John Taylor, Sonny Crockett was John Taylor's idol, right? So they go out on the sidewalk and they talk. Don comes back. John comes back. I'm told nothing. I didn't ask a question. I didn't ask anything that he said. We go back to the hotel. 7 a.m. the phone rings, you guys. And my manager says, "You're in. You're back in." I said, "Don't fuck with me." He said, "Michael, you're in. It's good. They made a deal with the merchandising." I believe that this was showbiz at its finest, because I think that his team simply got him more money for the merch because they knew full well that he couldn't play in front of 60,000 topless teenagers, and I have a propensity to be able to do that. A- And Robert Palmer is one of my favorite composers in the entire world, and I adored him and knew him 10 years before I joined the Power Station. Loved him, got stoned with him, loved him. So, and when people said, "Michael, they're big shoes to fill," I said, "I brought my own shoes."
I love that.
You know, get out of here. And it was back, and they'd worked it out. And I went to rehearsals at noon and was told we were doing Live Aid in 3 days. And that's the story of Live Aid.
Thank goodness for friends like Don Johnson, right?
Don Johnson is the most charismatic guy. If he said jump into the traffic, you would. He is a really unbelievable person. I mean, obviously, he's a spectacular actor, but he's a lot more than that. He's a really, really, really magical guy. And, you must recall a couple of weeks later when we were on Miami Vice doing Get It On. So, there was a certain, little negotiating going on.
It's incredible when you think about the speed with which that whole episode took place, right?
The greatest hits ever written by John Lennon or anybody else were done in 10 minutes. You don't think. Thinking is really overrated on all levels in any walk of life. Don't think at all. Just be. Just be there and don't think, because then you're going to come up with stuff that is dusty. Think of new stuff and new words and new ways of saying how you feel. That's what Lennon did. I mean, come on. You know, lyrically, John Lennon, he was a surreal poet. As we all know, and that's not stuff that you spit it out like Dylan. It's a gift, and you just plug into God, man. If God had a piece of Lennon's publishing, that wouldn't surprise me.
So, do you attribute this kind of success to being able to shuck and jive until the conditions match what you want them to be?
Well, it's not shuck and jive. That implies that you're trying to fool people. I've never tried to fool people. I think that my exuberance and enthusiasm is catchy. Anita Pallenberg was once asked what her greatest trait was, and she said, "My charm." So I feel the same way. I think I've lasted this long and done this much and made, what I've made, which is, I've been pretty successful over the years and also been in a hole in the ground, and I've never lost my confidence or exuberance in what I can do. And that is the key. You got to believe in yourself. You've got to. You cannot let Robert Christgau tell you what time it is.
Criticism does have a place, though, right, in helping us to understand culture.
See, you got to make your bones when you're a critic. This is why criticism is as absurd as the word itself.
I guess the idea behind it is that you make a good, bad value judgment.
Do you dig what you dig? Those who know. If I like Billie Eilish and you like Billy Idol,
I'm thrilled to live in a world where I have access to both.
fantastic. But to critique what I like, fuck off. Because this is me listening to this.
I totally see your point. My issue is with folks in the contemporary moment trying to tell me how to think about someone like Ringo Starr and comparing their drumming to what may be happening in the contemporary moment.
The thing about Ringo is, because you've had Bonzo, you've had Jim Keltner, you've had all these incredible Moon, all of the great drummers, but that's not the point. The point is you're in a band. What makes that band perfect is everybody in that band. It's not one shining star, because when that one shining star leaves that band, they usually, collapse into an abyss. Mick Jagger is an example of that. Mick Jagger, the greatest frontman, the original unique frontman, could not sell a solo record if he bought them himself, and he probably could. In this case, Ringo is a Beatle. That transcends that. That's like saying Ringo is July. It's an absurdity, and it infuriates me.
We can learn a lot from how he performed his role in the Beatles. He was the perfect drummer for that band. He was the one person who could sit for perhaps 14 hours while Lennon and McCartney or Harrison worked out great new ideas.
Exactly correct. Now that takes discipline. There's many sides to Ringo Starr, that one doesn't know because we don't want to know, and we shouldn't know how they did it. Only us geeks do that. But people that listen to music and just enjoy music for music's sake, you're absolutely precisely right. It's a very clever observation. 16 fucking hours waiting to find out what to do with the bass drum, and that's what makes great records. Records are not live performances. Records are records. They're music that lasts forever, and they knew that right from the get-go, from the doubling of his voice to the harmonies to the whole melodic view of it. Was so brilliant. And Ringo's right there. Ringo's right there giving it that rhythm. Because what is rock and roll? What is the most important instrument in rock and roll?
It's got to have a backbeat, so you can't lose it.
The beat. The fucking beat. You can't beat the beat. It's the groove. Everything is about groove. I don't care if it's Eddie Cochran or Eno. It's a rhythm. Eddie Cochran, I love it. It's, whether it's ambient or rockabilly, it doesn't matter. It's the feel. Ringo had the feel.
It was their producer, George Martin, who observed that in those 10 hours of recording that you referenced earlier, Ringo may have made maybe one, two, possibly three errors in all of those sessions.
Yeah, and the thing is, flubs are good. The thing is not to let flubs get in the way because you can get hung up on that. You can, like, if I sing something, not that I ever would, flat, um, then I would think, oh, that was flat, I'm fucked. But being a professional as well as being a spiritual leader, which I believe the Beatles are, then Ringo would get on with it. Right? Get on. And I've always thought that that's been my motto. If I have anything on my gravestone, is get on with it, you know. Um, and I think that he did just that.
As you know, we're only a few months away from marking the darkest day on the Beatles calendar, which is the terrible end of John Lennon's life. Do you recall where you were and what that impact was like?
I was in Boston with a band. Had a solo album out called "I'm Only Human," and the gig was done. I was watching Johnny Cash, and we were I got tears coming to us now, and we told John was dead, and we got in the van and drove to the Dakota from Boston right then and there. So that day I was at the Dakota and just stayed in the crowd till dawn, and then we had to drive to Cleveland, and we're on the road. And Yoko had asked for 2 minutes of silence. Oh, this is getting me all worked up now. 2 minutes of silence, and we stopped and we got out of the van and sobbed really in each other's arms, which in some miraculous way made our band even closer. Can you imagine that? And then we got back in the van and drove to Cleveland, did a gig, and the world wasn't the same.
The way he died will never be anything but senseless. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he stood for something and he got shot in the back. So I was talking to my friend Gabriel Byrne, who's a big Beatle fan, and I only bring him up because he's my friend. And we were talking about Johnny, adores John, and he said to me, somebody said, "Hey, Michael, the last fucking thing he did was give something, a gift to a fan." Think about that. He gave an autograph and got shot in the back.
Changing gears for a moment, when you think about your career, how do you decide what to do next? What kind of art you'll make when you've worked in so many different genres?
I don't look forward because that doesn't exist. What I do is I look. You don't need to look forward. You look and do it in the moment. Whatever it is, do it here right now. Do it. Do it. It's not a question of what happens. It's a question of what's happening. As an artist, don't think about moving forward. Where is what? Forward changes as the weather changes. You think about what's happening now. You're in the moment. That's the only thing that matters. This conversation, I didn't write this. You didn't write this. This is happening at the same time.
So then what's your writing process like? How do you approach it?
Just do it. Do it. Here it is. Let's do it. Okay, I've got a pen. I've got some paper. I'll write words. I'll get the guitar. I'll put the words to the chords that I know, the humble few chords that I know, and then I'll record it. And I'll see if my band and Stevie likes it. And if they like it, then we'll record it. But that's a sequence of events. It's not looking forward.
Well, in that sense, then, what are you working on now? What is right in front of you in the moment?
I'm writing and have been for years a musical about Desaad. It's called The Sadist, and it's a rock and roll, if you will, different genres too, according to which character. Like Robespierre is a punk, and Marie Antoinette is Marianne Faithfull. So it's a very interesting thing, and I work very, very hard on that.
How do you maintain the momentum, given that we're in the age of COVID?
I'm writing songs with a number of different people via Zoom, recording. Because we all have in my band the Mistakes, we all have a studios because they're session guys and they've been very lucky, as I have, and so we do it that way, and it's great. I mean, I believe in the ethos of sitting in a studio and looking at each other and playing music. Of course, that's the primary way of doing it. But if you technologically have to do it, then do it. Don't explain, oh man, the vibes aren't there, man. Well, fuck off. I mean, here I am, my vibes, and there's Zoom, and let's do this. Let's what you got.
What do you think it is then that holds artists back from making new ground, from creating new art.
Mommy and daddy.
Is that right, really?
Mommy and daddy.
So then it's the old Philip Larkin poem, right? They fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you.
Well, everything springs from that, doesn't it? And what he's saying there is that, the thing is that you are what you're born into until you realize you're not. And you can make yourself up, you know. I don't, I had a dreadful childhood. At 1 years old, my, education was paid for because my father was an aristocrat, a marquis, a very wealthy man who embezzled money and went to jail, and I won. Fortunately, my education was paid for. My mother was a 17-year-old stripper, his fifth wife. And by the way, they didn't get married till I was 30. And I got a cable, and I'm like on tour, and I get this cable saying from my father saying, "Congratulations, you're not a bastard anymore," which is the title of my book, of course. I'm only kidding, but my point being is that where the pain begins. So what is pain? Pain is love. So what did Desaad enjoy? Pain. And I rest my case.
So then, by that logic, we can reinvent ourselves. We can take life head on. To borrow a phrase from John Lennon, there are no problems, only solutions.
Yes, of course you can. Everything is possible is my, motto. In my case, the disadvantages on the surface were advantages underneath. I've learned more from the mistakes than I did from the triumphs.
So, when it comes to the Beatles, which songs do you find yourself returning to?
Melodically, Dear Prudence, and metaphysically, I Am the Walrus.
Dear Prudence is a wonder. It's like a miracle.
It's perfect. It's a perfect song. Won't you come out to play? But he just sings it so great. It's that double track voice and the acoustic in there, and it's just so John Lennon. He wrote it in Ricochet, as I'm sure you're aware, and it was Mia Farrow's sister. But it didn't matter who it was. I mean, the song is about him. It's my favorite. And I Am the Walrus because of his astute, Dickensian surrealism. It's so British.
To me, I'm the Walrus is endlessly fascinating because it also sits with John Lennon, who is now on the cusp at that point in the Beatles' history of beginning his artistic journey with Yoko Ono.
That's something in and of itself. And I think that frisson, as they say in French, that friction created even greater music, with her there, whatever she was doing, you know. And I think when people say she broke up the Beatles, she made the Beatles at that age time in their lives. I think she had a tremendous effect on all four of them. Fundamentally, the vibe is that she was very supportive of him and the Beatles. But all of the crap that had gone between them pre Yoko, she brought up the difficulties of the four of them. She brought that into their faces, and that's what actually made them realize that it would be better if they did their own music. Because let's face it, those last few weeks were all solo records.
Before we sign off, could you tell us about how you came to be into Sir with Love? How old were you then?
17, in drama school, and Columbia Pictures come to the drama school, and they take me and Judy and Jason and a few others, and audition us. And I remember I did To Be or Not to Be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings of outrageous fortune, or to believe them or not to be. And I did this big dramatic thing. Said, "Hey, Michael, would you mind wearing sunglasses for this whole movie?" It was so funny because I was such a serious young actor. And we went in there, man, and we met Sidney Poitier, and the rest of it is history. And Sean Connery was in the next soundstage doing Bond, and he would pop in and chat with Sidney. And I'm 17, you know. And we're all stripping each other. It was fantastic. It was like the greatest thing in the world. And then we could all get into these clubs for nothing.
It was 1967, and Poitier was just churning out movies, right?
Well, he did it 3 in that year. Who's Coming to Dinner, Heat of the Night, and To Sir with Love. All in 67, 66, 67. Imagine that. Three of the greatest movies ever with one of the greatest actors that ever lived. It was insane.
Thank you so much for such a wide-ranging and stimulating conversation. This has really been one for the books. We sure appreciate it. Everything Fab Four is presented by Salon.com, the premier news, politics, innovation, and arts website. For more information, visit everythingfab4.com, where you can learn more about our podcast and my latest Beatles-related book, Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans. The Everything Fab Four theme song, Seize the Day, is provided courtesy of Black Rabbit, the high-octane Beatles cover band, an innovative psychedelic rock project from Rockaway Beach, Queens in New York City. Like what you heard today on Everything Fab Four? Be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and recommend the show to your friends. Plus, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EF4 Podcast. Distributed by Salon.com, Everything Fab Four is a Wonderwall production. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.